Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nickel City Mafia YouTube channel, where we talk all things Buffalo and then some. Today, we got a special show for you. We're going to be talking about the top three all-time Sabres at each position. Oh man, I can't even tell you how excited I am. I just said I'm super excited, but it just brought back a lot of memories for me to kind of go back to 1970 when I was just 4 years old. Now I didn't watch the Sabres at 4 years old. I probably did. Probably somebody had me on their lap in front of the game. Maybe even this gentleman over to the side of me. But by 8 years old, I was watching the Sabres all the time on the TV whenever I could. So I am familiar with all these greats we're going to talk about. Joining me today to help me through this is my dad, Bill Thornton. Dad, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Glad I'm anxious to get this going here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun because you and we kind of came up with the concept. We haven't shared who our top three are at every position. We both had different criterias. For me, I only looked at what they did as a Sabre. I didn't care if you played 10 years in the league and you were 5 years with the Sabres. I didn't care about those other 5 years that you weren't a Sabre. So for me, you had to play 4 or more years with the Sabres. And then you also had to, again, be one of the top players at that position. And we could have used stats. We could have went by just favorite players that we had. And again, Dad, you and I have different criteria. So it's going to be fun to see how many of these we match on and how many we don't. I don't know. I have a feeling we're going to match on quite a few, but let's see. So we're going to start off with, by the way, before I get much further, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, give us a like and comment. We want to hear you in the channel as we're talking about these different positions. If you agree, disagree, if you have other players that you want to throw into that top three. Jake, it's great to see you. I'm glad you're joining us out there today in the channel. And then also, I want to remember to mention that my dad has his own YouTube channel. He talks about board games, mostly board games, but he does some videos as well. He's doing great. He's very close to 400 subscribers. So please, let's get him to that 400. He keeps hovering right around 395. Let's get him over the top there. So the link is in the description to his channel. And Dad, I'll give you a little bit of time later on in the show when we wrap up to talk more about your channel. But
Okay.
I think let's get into this thing. So we're going to start with the top three defensemen of all time. So Dad, you're going to start. Go ahead.
Well, I have four, and they're not. Well, none of them are honorable mentions. I have four, and when I made my pick, some of these are favorite picks, some of these are stat-wise picks, some of them are only Sabre stats, and some of them are full-time stats. I had to look at all the players in total. But my number one defenseman is Phil Housley. 8 years with the Sabres. He had a plus for a guy that scored 558 points. He had a +3 plus minus rating. And normally the guys that are scoring a lot of points like that, they're involved in a lot of stuff and they don't have the good. So Phil Housley was my first. My second one was a guy that spent 14 years with us. And then during his 14 years, he was a +320 with only one season where he had a minus a season, and that was Bill Hyatt, Hijt.
Yep.
Third, this guy here was named when he was named captain of the Sabres, he was the youngest captain in NHL history at the time, and that was Jim Schonfield. Jim was a shot blocking fool, and he liked to get him. He got in one of the greatest fights there was in the stadium down there. They actually went through it where the doors opened for the Zamboni to come in. They actually fought. Those doors blew open. They fought out into the hallway. It was pretty cool. Jim was a +220 as a defenseman, and he had no minus seasons. And last, but definitely not least, another one that was very steady, 14 years as a Sabre, a +166 rating, Mike Ramsey. And those are my four. There were some other guys that were pushing really close, and I debated on them, but I had to finally make a cut, and that was it.
Well, I will say with that fourth one, you pretty much stole all of my three, believe it or not. So for me, I did not go with Housley. And the reason I didn't go, he was an honorable mention. Yeah, I could have went with the guy who scored a lot of goals, but when we talk defensemen, I want stay-at-home guys that have these plus minus ratings in our favor. So like you said, Housley was +3 in his entire career with us, which means, yeah, he scored a lot of points, but when he was on the ice, we gave up just as many. So I wanted those guys that really play solid defense. So for me, the number one guy was Jim Schoenfeld for many of the things that you mentioned. 9 of 11 seasons he played with the Sabres. We made the playoffs. Like you said, he had a plus 230. He was my grandma's favorite player. I remember watching Sabre games with her, Nan and Pop, and she'd be like, "Oh, I love that Jim Schoenfeld." She liked his red hair or something. I don't know. But man, that guy, like you said, he was like a second goalie. When he was on the ice, now, sometimes it worked against the goalie because they were like, he was blocking everything and he was blocking the goaltender's view, but he was incredible. So he's up there. Mike Ramsey kind of stole him from me on that last one. He's my number two. Yes, he is part of that infamous Do You Believe in Miracles 1980 team, USA team that went on to win the gold medal in the Olympics, which they were not expected to do. That was an incredible game. I still remember Al Michaels with that. Do you believe in miracles? And still gives me chills to this day. And then Bill Height. I didn't think I knew you were going to use him, and he's not a flashy player. The guy wasn't flashy at all, and he got underappreciated. But man, was he a solid defenseman.
You see that?
He was a solid. There he is. Yeah, solid defenseman. And Big Al here's in the channel. That's Jake's dad. He's saying I was at that game, and I'm assuming he's talking about that gold medal game. And so I'm going to mention who you're just talking about right there, Big Al. My honorable mentions, Dad, was Jerry King Kong Korab. Oh my goodness. Now there's some interesting facts about King Kong Korab. And first of all, he was just very physical. He was 6'3", he was 220. He had such a hard slap shot. And if he had the brawl, he would. But he was also plus 78 lifetime. So good. Another solid defenseman for us. And an interesting fact about him is that he was traded. He was traded in 1980 to the LA Kings for a future first round pick. And you know who the Sabres used for that first round pick? Mr. Phil Housley. So interesting how they're related there. And then Phil Housley, yes, I put him as an honorable mention. And I did say that I could have easily said Phil Housley in the top three. And initially I did that. But when I started to look at that plus minus rating, I'm like, no, I want pure defensemen here. I want guys that, like, hey, if he had scored a lot of goals and his plus or minus was much higher, he'd have been in the top three easily. So that's the only reason he didn't make my top three. So yes, Big L, I remember King Kong Korab like it was yesterday, one of my favorites. And Dad, I got to say, a lot of these guys that we mentioned, not all of them, but some of them were around for that cup run in 75. And as we talk through these players, like the Bills, I guess, how did this team not win a Stanley Cup? And the only thing I can come up with is there was those Canadians, the Montreal Canadiens, who dominated hockey early on. And then, of course, the Philadelphia Flyers, who beat us in that cup, who were also dominant early on. So anyhow, just such great players. And so there you go, Dad. Any surprises? I mean, I lined up pretty much right with you.
No, no any surprises. I thought you would have rated Housley higher, but that's okay. I agree with the way you rated him.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to left wingers, Dad.
Left wingers. Okay.
Making it easy for you on this one.
No. Well, first of all, on my first line, I kind of lined this up with three lines, not just particular line, the left wingers. Okay, so the left winger on my first line is Rick Martin. 10 years with the Sabres, 382 goals. That's a pretty good average for scoring goals for every year. So that was who was on my first line. My second line is a guy that not all the years with Buffalo, but a lot of years with Buffalo, 12 years in the league. He's 15th in the NHL history in the most goals scored, 640, 274 power play, or 164 power play, or 61 power play goals, or 274. And he's tied with Alex Ovechkin right now. And that's Dave Andreychuk. Big Dave, man, I haven't seen a player like him in a long, long time. He got in front of the net I was one of the announcers the other day was talking about him, and they says he scored 90% of his goals from 3 feet from the goal. He got in
Yep.
there and they just couldn't move him, and he was really good with his hands and stick. So he was on my second line, and my third line, my third guy basically was a favorite. I really liked him. 8 years with the Sabres, 254 goals. Thomas Vanek. I like
Oh,
Thomas.
interesting.
And then my honorable mention was Craig Ramsey. Craig could have easily been in the third, but I went with a favorite instead of 14 years, his entire career with us, and he scored 282 goals, 672 points. So Craig is my honorable mention.
You keep stealing my guys with your honorable mentions, so I think I'm going to stop you from doing honorable mentions. Anyhow, so let me go through mine, and they're pretty much spot on with yours. So Rick Martin, absolutely agree with you there. Man, what this guy, part of that famous French connection with Rene Robert and Gilles Perreault. I mean, this was one of the most exciting lines to ever play in hockey, and we were fortunate enough to have him. And he had one of the hardest slap shots in the game. Man, I just remember like thinking to myself, because remember, back in those days when he played, yeah, those goaltenders had those little cheap face masks. They weren't these big masks protecting their necks. Man, they were just exposed all over the place. And I'm thinking, and a lot of these guys were smaller than we see today. The goaltenders today are a little bit bigger size. And I'm like, man, I would not want to get into front of this guy's shot, because as a kid, I played goaltender. Man, I had you guys buy me all the gear for goaltender one Christmas, and I was out playing all the time. And so yes, Rick Martin would have scared the heck out of me to have to block one of his shots. One of the hardest shots in the league, and also a crime that this gentleman is not in the Hall of Fame. He is not in the NHL Hall of Fame. They must have some tough requirements, because there's a couple good players on this team that have not made the Hall of Fame, and maybe you have something to say on that there. But he was a 7-time All-Star. He was an NHL All-Star MVP in 76-77 season. He 5-time 40-plus goal scorer. And let's see, he had 2 seasons with 52 goals and 1 season with 49. I mean, incredible. And like you said, 10 years as a Buffalo Sabre. And he's got the second most goals as a Sabre, only second to Mr. Gilbert Perreault. Suffered a knee injury in 1980 with a collision with a goaltender, with a Capitals goaltender, and that kind of started his decline of his career. But again, we'd love to see this guy in the Hall of Fame. Dave Andrewchuk, I knew you were going to say this guy. You always would text me, always time I talk to you. I mean, this is a guy you would brag about all the time. So he's right there on my list as well for all the reasons you mentioned. And it was nice to see that in his 22nd season, Dad, 22 seasons, who plays that anymore? He finally got a Stanley Cup with the Lightning, and right. he was also a captain of the team during the 2003-2004 season with us. So good stuff. And then Craig Ramsey, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you. And I made a mistake. I think no, I didn't. No, Craig Ramsey. I was getting Craig Ramsey and Mike Ramsey confused. No, I got Mike Ramsey correct. Craig Ramsey he was on the line with Don Luce, and I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later. These guys were incredible. That line. They put up some goals, which was shocking because they were meant to stop the opposing team's top scorers. So Craig Ramsey, Don Luce, and Danny Gear to some degree, who we'll mention later, I think they were all on the same line, and their top objective was to stop the top scorers on the other team. But this team was still able to, this line was still able to put up points, great penalty killers. You can see he was plus 324 lifetime, Dad, on the rating there. So that tells me this is a left winger. So you could tell he was playing a lot of penalty minutes, right? Penalty killing minutes. And a lot of that, I would assume, was accumulated there. Same with Don Luce. All these guys can play both sides. They can play offense and defense. And that number just shows you. Right. So I'm pretty much in agreement with you there. I did not have any honorable mentions on that one as well. Let me check back with the channel here. So we got, Craig Ramsey, Bill Height, and Lee Fogelin. Big L says. All right, cool stuff. All right, Dad, let's move over to the right wingers.
Yeah, this one is going to be some surprises for you. First of all, no surprise, only because I didn't want to take the rash of the Sabre fans. Ronnie Rivera is my first one. He's on the line with Martin. Okay, we haven't got the centers yet, so he's on
Yeah.
the line with Martin. 9 years with us, 550 points, 222 goals, 330 assists. So you know what you can say. The French Connection, too much talk about them already. I didn't get to really see them a lot because that was one of the times when I was overseas and we didn't get any we didn't have any television, and the sporting news was always old. Okay. Second is a surprise. This guy scored 76 goals in one season with the Sabres. He's the only guy that he's scored. That's the most any Sabre has ever scored in one season. He came from Russia in the days where you couldn't just come over here. He had to defect and come over here. And my second guy on the right wing is Alexander Mogilny. Okay. And Alexander, and in his career, has had 211 goals, 233 assists, and 444. But he was so exciting to watch. That's why I picked him as one of my right wingers. Not because he's been with us for 10 or 15 years, but he was so exciting during the time he was here.
Yep.
And then on the third guy, which could have easily been up to the second guy too, was a gentleman that scored 50 goals twice in his 8 years with the Sabres, and that was Danny Gear. Danny scored 267 goals and 500 points in his career. But 8 years, he was dynamite with give him the puck, he was putting it in the back of the net. And here's going to be my most surprising honorable mention of the day. And I had to do this. This guy is fourth all time in the number of games played for the Sabres and provided Sabre fans with a tremendous amount of excitement in his career. And that guy that was fourth in the games, name is Rob Ray.
Rob Ray. All right, Mr.
Fourth in games, 3,189 penalty minutes in his career. The closest Sabre ever to him was 1,448 penalty minutes. But Rob Ray provided our fans with a lot of excitement.
The enforcer. He was the enforcer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we differ a little bit. We agree on some. So on my side, I did not have McGillney making the top three, but he's an honorable mention for sure. And for all the reasons you said, scored 76 goals in 93. He was a 6-time All-Star. He was the first Russian to defect from the Soviet Union to join the NHL, just like you said. He got a Stanley Cup with the Devils in 2000. And when he was traded from the Canucks to the Devils for their playoff run and was able to get a cup at that time. So good for him. He's a member of the Triple Gold Club, which is rare. And that's somebody who's won an Olympic gold, they've won a World Championship gold, and they've won a Stanley Cup. So he's part of that club. And like I said, we already mentioned all his all-star appearances. So he's an honorable mention there, Dad. I wasn't far off from you there. I agree with you on Rene Robert, who we lost this year in June. Sadly, was a great guy. I was watching some video clips from people talking about him, and just felt like he was just a good, wholehearted person. I mean, did so much for people and didn't really care about recognition. Yeah, there are some players out there that they want you to know that they're a top scoring person, a player. They want you to know that they're one of the best in the league. And this guy really didn't care about that. I mean, he put up a lot of points for us and was on that famous line, but just a super good guy. Scored 40 goals twice, 7-time 20-plus goal scorer, 2-time All-Star. Was put in the Buffalo Hall of Fame in 1989. And one of the things he's most famous for is back in 75 during that Stanley Cup, Game 3 in the infamous fog game. Dad, I don't know if you remember the fog game, okay? So it was pretty hot that day, unusually hot in Buffalo. The AC was out. The fog was thick. I can imagine playing a game when I saw the video clips and I rewatched that. I'm like, oh my God, how these guys were even able to play. But he scored the overtime game-winning goal in that fog game in Game 3, where the Sabres had to come back and they won that game. Let's see
I just saw a replay of that goal recently because the Sabres are doing the 50-year tribute to Jenneret, and every game they show some of his calls and that was one of them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Rick Jenneret, that should have been a guy we put on here. We'll talk about him because there's some calls that I'm going to mention that are just give me chills every time I hear them and think about them. So
I would have bet money you wouldn't have guessed Rob Ray.
Nah, Rob Ray is not on my list at all, Dad. No, not on my list. So, like I said, you surprised. You might thought I would. He's not. He was somewhere in the middle, right? But I'm very biased to some of the old timers here. Danny Gare, yes, made my list absolutely. The dude was a 2-time 50+ goal scorer, and I already mentioned earlier that is incredible when you consider he was on the line with Ramsey and probably down loose, and their objective was to shut down the other guys. And here's this young kid, his first year. He's going to the cup with us and putting up all these goals. I mean, and he had such an incredible wrist shot. That was what he was known for. I mean, they don't when you read about Danny Gare, they don't mention his wrist shot, but dude had a phenomenal wrist shot, dead accurate with it. And yeah. And surprisingly, Dad, he was a fighter, man. I'll tell you what, he wasn't a big kid, but when he got into fights, I have something that's pretty cool here. Let's see. So he's a tough fighter despite his size. 40 seconds into his first exhibition game with the Sabres, he went toe-to-toe with Dave Schultz. Dave the Hammer Schultz from Boston, considered the reigning NHL heavyweight champion. And he went toe-to-toe with Schultz to a draw, is what they said. And I can remember many, many fights that little guy would get into and just be like, wow, just amazing to me. So yeah, Danny Gare for sure. Here's a guy you didn't mention, so we differ a little bit here. Mr. Mike Foligno. So Mike Foligno.
Yeah, Mike was a really exciting cat. He captained us for several years, and and he had a good resume to go with and everything. But I just couldn't get him in there. I just couldn't get him up.
Yeah, he was a 40+ goal scorer. Once he had a 25+ goal seasons 6 times with us, and 9 times if you include the other teams that he played with. He was very famous. He was that guy who would jump when he scored a goal.
Yeah, his son does it too now.
Yeah. And then another guy. I mean, if you looked at the guy, you didn't even have to. I mean, you would know this right away. His nose was always broke. This guy was a fighter. If you ever looked at it, he had that broken nose always off to one side. So just a physical guy as well. And then let's see here. He was selected third overall pick in 1979 by the Detroit Red Wings. And let's see here. There was something interesting about Foligno. Maybe it's in my notes later on. And let's see here. So yeah. And then my honorable mention, of course, was McGillney. So the only thing we really differed on is Ray and Foligno. All right, Dad. Now it's time for me to go first on some of these. And we're going to start with goalies. I'm going to go goalies, and then we're going to finish up with centers. And for me, I'm going to go 3-1. 3 up until the top one that I think is the best of the best. So for me, Ryan Miller is at number 3. Fifth round draft pick in 1999, became the full-time starter in 2005-2006 season. Was a Sabre for 11 years. Played in 540 games with us, winning 284 games with a 9.916 save percentage and a 2.6 goals against. He led the Sabres to 2 consecutive conference finals. Unfortunately, we lost both of those. And let's see, his career year came in 2009-2010, where he won the Vezina Trophy with a .929 save percentage and a 2.22 goals against. Absolutely incredible. I can remember Ryan Miller, and he was a stud. So he's my number 3 guy. Number 2, going way back, Dad, and way back. And I'll be surprised if you even talk about this guy. But the goalie, the first goaltender to start the first game ever for the Buffalo Sabres was Mr. Roger Crozier. So when the Sabres drafted, when they put the organization together, Punch Imlach realized that he was going to need a veteran to help his Sabres out, his new team out. And so they traded for him from the Red Wings. By the way, when I look at a lot of these trades that we did, we have some relationship with the Red Wings. We do a lot of deals with them. I don't know what the backstory is there, but we traded for Crozier from the Red Wings, and right for our inaugural season, he was already a 7-year veteran. He played in 44 games in our inaugural season. Didn't have the best record during that season, but our Sabres, it was the first year, and they were a young, upcoming team and got off to a rough start their first year. And let's see here. But he started that first game, and they won the first game. He turned away 35 of 36 shots against the Penguins, and the Sabres came away with a 2-1 victory. By the way, Gilbert Perreault scored his first goal in his first game as well. Guy was only 5'8", Dad. 5'8", 160 pounds. Where do you hear that today? I mean, goaltenders, is there anyone under? I mean, most of them now have to be close to 6 foot, close to 200 pounds, big guys. This was a guy that was only 5'8", 160 pounds. Unbelievable. But he was very acrobatic for sure. He played for Buffalo for 6 seasons. And interesting fact about him, he's the last goaltender to ever play all of his team's games in a regular season. He did that in the 1964-65 season for the Detroit Red Wings. So you don't see that anymore either. And back then, though, they played 70 games in the season, and he played all of them. You don't see that at all these days. Let's see here. What else do I have on him? First player to win the Conn Smythe Trophy while playing for the losing team in the Stanley Cup. That was back in 1966 when he lost the cup with the Wings, but he got the Conn Smythe Trophy. And what is the other things? Interesting thing, he played in 2 games in the Stanley Cup in that 75 season. And one of them was that famous ball game that we just talked about. What had happened is Jerry Desjardins, who Punch Him Like had traded for, had let up 3 goals in the first period. So they bring in Crozier, and he goes on to only give up 1 goal, and they ended up coming back in that game and winning in overtime. So Crozier got the win there. He started one other game, game 6. He had shut out the Flyers for the first 2 periods. It was 0-0 going into the third, and then the Flyers got 2 goals in the third to win it in game 6. And let's see, what else do I have? So health issues with him. He suffered from pancreatitis most of his life, and that was kind of his decline there. So for me, going back to the beginning, started it all. And I do want to give you an interesting story that I learned while researching this, Dad, back in that cup run. There was a gentleman named Gary Bromley. And I know I threw this name out to you randomly, and you're like, Gary Bromley, and I haven't heard of him. So neither had I. But during that cup run, this guy, Gary Bromley, he had played in 50 games for us during that cup run. He was 26, 11, and 11. And for some reason, Punch Him Like didn't have very much confidence in him. He did not see the postseason at all. It was Desjardins and Roger Crozier in postseason. So it's kind of weird to me. I'd never heard this guy at all, but he was a big part of that cup run. Played in 50 games, which is what, 2/3, a little bit more than 2/3 of the season? I mean, that's unbelievable to me that he did not get a chance in the playoffs. Anyhow, let's see. Imlock just didn't have faith in him. All right. So that's Roger Crozier. A lot of information, Dad, and that's why, I mean, I'm going back to the beginning, and just was a solid veteran guy who did some good things for the Sabres. Number 1, it should be no surprise to anyone at all. And if he's not on your list, I'm going to have to go see if you've been drinking or something today. I don't know. But Dominic Hasek, for sure. He's the second goaltender, along with Crozier, to help get us to a Stanley Cup. And most people, and including myself, feel that he's the best goaltender of all time. He's certainly the most decorated. I mean, he's got a .922 save percentage career for his career, 2.2 goals against for his career, and he's won 6 Vezina trophies. I mean, that was done in 15 years. That's insane. He's the only goaltender to win 2 Hart Memorial trophies, which is the MVP of the league. Only goaltender to do that. And let's see, 2-time Stanley Cup winner. Unfortunately, that came after he went on to the Red Wings. And again, see the Red Wings connection, Dad? I don't know what's going on. We get guys from the Red Wings, we send them to the Red Wings, but there's some relationship early on that I would love to explore and figure out who did we know? Why were we dealing so much with Detroit? He's an Olympic gold winner for the Czech national hockey team in 1998, and he played from the Sabres from 92 to 2001. So there are my top three. I have honorable mentions, but Dad, I'm not going to throw them out there until I hear your top three.
All right, my top three. I'm going to go reverse from top to bottom.
Okay.
Okay. And I am on track with you, Dominic, number one. Okay. You said everything that you need to say about Dominic Hasek.
Yeah.
I could the flip flop man. That guy did more flip flopping around in the crease than anybody. My number two was Ryan Miller. Okay, because his career and everything he did, 11 years, and he had 284 wins in his career. That may not have been all Buffalo wins, but they were, they were there. Then this next one is not. I was going down in stats from that. Then this one, next guy, the third, it wasn't third in stats because I skipped a couple goalies, only because I didn't want to talk about them recently.
Okay.
All right. And my third guy, still with a 9.09 save percentage, was Martin Biron. 300 games played with us, 134 wins, 115 losses, and a 2.53 save percentage. Goals against. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Marty he filled the gap in there for quite a few years from us, and there was a couple. Like I said, there was a couple other guys that were higher than him on the goals against or the save percent is one of the two, but they were recent guys, and I didn't want to include them as Sabres. They should just take their name right off the list. And I gave an honorable mention because, I looked at all of the guys through history, the Jardins and Tom Barrasso and all of those guys, and I looked at them, and they were all sub 900 save percentage guys. But I did include one in honorable mention. It was Donnie Edwards.
Yep.
Okay, Donnie, had 6 years with us, 130. He had 150 wins in his career, and he was 8.96 with a 2.91 goals against. So that was my goalies. We were pretty close, except for Martin Biron.
Yep, I did not, and it was funny. I saw Biron, but I didn't even have him on my honorable mentions. But I can see why you went with him for sure. For me, honorable mention, you mentioned Tom Barrasso, youngest Vezina player, Vezina Trophy winner at 18 years of age, and he also got the Calder Trophy that same rookie season. So he had a great career with us, but honorable mention for him. Jerry Desjardins, I mentioned him. We traded for him during that Stanley Cup run. Right. And as a kid, when I was out there in my goalie equipment, that's who I was pretending to be. Jerry Desjardins. I can remember Rick Jenneret saying his name. So he was one of my favorites. He was kind of like who I thought I was when I was out there playing goal. Donnie Edwards, yes, I totally agree with you there. This guy had an amazing glove hand. It might have been illegal. They always would show his glove hand. I'm trying to show my glove hand here. He had a huge glove. I mean, it was amazing the saves that this kid would make. And then I put Suave in there as well, Bob Suave. So a lot of my favorite. There was so many. This was the toughest position for me by far. Dad was the goaltender.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the centers here, and then we'll wrap things up with a couple extra questions. Centers, and I'll start. And I'm going to go with the first to the third. Actually, no, I'm going to start with the third here because I like building up. It should be no surprise anyway. Third for me, Mr. Pat LaFontaine. No, I didn't stutter. That was just how Rick Jenneret would say his name whenever he score a goal for us. Pat LaFontaine. He is, to this day, he holds the record for most points scored in a single season by a Buffalo Sabre, which was 148 in the 1992-93 season. He's also part of that other famous Rick Jenneret call, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. He was the one who assisted Brad May on that overtime win against Boston to eliminate them from the playoffs. So super cool there. He was drafted. He was a first round pick, third overall by the New York Islanders in 1983. Played 6 seasons with the Sabres. He was the captain for 5 of those 6 seasons. Let's see, what else do I have on him? 2 times 50 plus score, 7 times 40 plus goal scorer, and 3 of his seasons with the Sabres went to the playoffs. And I think with a little few, because he was a smaller guy who played center, and injuries started hitting him later in his career. And if those hadn't hit him, who knows what might happen. But great player, fast skater, and great puck handler. And it was exciting when he was on the ice. And he played, I believe, on the same line as McGillney. And so that was just a super exciting line to watch. Second, not a flashy player, but a guy who Craig Ramsey knows extremely well, and Danny Gear, Mr. Don Luce. Don Luce. I mean, he played 10 years with the Sabres. He was in the Hall of Fame, Buffalo Sabres Hall of Fame in '86. Great penalty killer, great checking center, Dad, and came over from the Red Wings in '71. And here's another guy, like Craig Ramsey, plus 241 career rating with the Buffalo Sabres. And his best season, this is insane to me, was in 1974, where he had a plus 61 rating. These guys were out there killing penalties better than, I don't know, I'd like to check their stats against anyone else in the league doing penalty killing. That line, Don Luce, Craig Ramsey, I think Danny Gear was on that same line as well. Again, their goal, stop the opposing team's top scorers, yet this line was still putting up points. So, again, he's very durable too, Dad. First of all, he's only missed 14 games in his 10 years with the Sabres. That's unheard of today.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. And then he scored 25 shorthanded goals as a Buffalo Sabre. So again, not only is he going against those top scorers, he's out there killing penalties, and he's getting shorthanded goals. Him and Craig Ramsey. Craig Ramsey, I think, had 27 shorthanded goals. So, man, that line, underappreciated. I mean, when you talk history, that French connection is what everyone wants to talk about. But that line was crucial to us going to that Stanley Cup in '75. And to this, now looking at all these players, Dad, I don't know how the heck they didn't win a cup. And again, I said earlier, it just happened to be that they were playing in the era that there was the Montreal Canadiens and the Philadelphia Flyers, unfortunately. All right. Top guy, should be no surprise to anybody. Gilles Perreault, the center of that French connection, the first overall drafted Sabre player in 1970. He played all his years with the Buffalo Sabres. 17 years, Dad. Inducted in the Hall of Fame of 1990. He made the playoffs. His teams made the playoffs in 11 of his 17 years. And in my opinion, Dad, and you could agree or disagree, he's the all-time greatest as far as Buffalo Sabres go. I was watching another guy's video just a day or so ago, and he was debating whether it was Hasek or Perreault. And I don't know how you could go and say that it's not Perreault. Just unbelievable. And I'm not sure, this is kind of interesting to me, not sure why this guy never scored 50 goals, because if you get a chance, and I know, Dad, you said in those early years, now Perreault played for 17, so I know you got to see him, but the highlight reels for this guy and the end-to-end rushes and the moves that he put on players, it was incredible. It was like a Barry Sanders type thing. So I highly recommend, if none of you have seen, I know there's some folks that are watching this show that, they only know these guys from reading about them or hearing about them from guys like us. But go to YouTube. There is some highlight film on Gilles Perreault. And let me tell you a little story about him, Dad, before I get into your three. So in 1970, this is very interesting. In 1970, there were 2 new franchises awarded in the NHL, the Buffalo Sabres and the Vancouver Canucks. And it was a foregone conclusion that Perreault was going to be that first pick. So who was going to get that pick was based on a wheel. They had set up like a kind of a roulette wheel, and they had numbers that were 2 to 6, 8 to 12, and they had a 7 spot, which is just blank. If the wheel would have landed on that, they would have had to spin it again. So the Canucks got numbers 2 to 6, and the Sabres had numbers 8 to 12. And the reason why the Sabres took 8 to 12 is because Punch Imlach's favorite number was 11. And so what happened is they spin the wheel, and the commissioner at that time thinks I think it was Clarence Campbell. It was the league president, sorry, spun the wheel, and he initially thought the pointer landed on the 1. While in reality, there was no 1 on the wheel. It was 2 through 6, 8 through 12, and there was a blank spot. So he starts congratulating the Vancouver Canucks. Punch Imlach says, wait a minute, can you please check the wheel again? Sure enough, it was not number 1, it was 11. So the Buffalo Sabres got the first choice. And interesting enough, Perreault wore number 11 while he played in his junior years. And he kept that number in the professional career, not only because he had played as number 11, but also to kind of, honor the fact that it came up on the wheel as well. How crazy is that? The guy wore number 11. The wheel landed on 11. I thought that was a great story. And also, fun fact as well, Phil Esposito, one of the greatest, once said if anyone was to break his 76 goal, 152 point season, it would be Gilbert Perreault. That never happened. But anyhow, you can just kind of see the respect this guy had from a lot of players around the league. Anyhow, a lot of stuff, but centers to me. So talk to me, Dad, about your top 3 centers.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, thanks for the history lesson. I'm a refresher because I was in Korea in 1970. Not only did we not have any TV, we didn't have any radio. In the newspaper, the Stars and Stripes news would be like 4 days after something happened, and they wouldn't emphasize a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay, centers. I'm going to go from my honorable mention up. Okay. And I thought about this guy because I really liked the way he played. I think he was only 5 years with the Sabres, but he was our captain, and he was a hard hitter and a hard player, and he wanted to do everything he could for the team, and that was Michael Pekka. Okay. And, I just think that he gave something to the Sabres that, other players wouldn't give. Number 3 is Don Luce, and you already talked about Don Luce. Okay. And his everything, especially that plus 61 in 1974. That was unheard of that a forward would have that many, be that high in plus.
Yep.
Number 2, you had him on your list, but a different order. I had Pat LaFontaine because he was the center for and on the left wing with him was Dave Andertruck, and the right wing was Mo Gilney, and I'd love to have that line back today.
Oh man, absolutely.
Because I kind of put these together as lines.
Yeah.
LaFontaine is, just great. His speed and everything. And yeah, you're the injuries. I think the big injury towards the end of his career that really slowed him down a lot was he had a really horrendous jaw injury
to
his jaw and that. And then, of course, number 1, Gilbert Perreault. Now, I would your channel would have won up in flames if I had to put him somewhere else.
Yeah, like I said, I would have had to come over to your house and see what you were drinking today, or if you were drinking at all. So I got to ask you the question, Dad: is Gilbert Perreault the greatest all-time Buffalo Sabre?
I think so. I would have to vote on that. Hasek is very, very close, and probably depends on how much sleep I had the night before, whether I could probably flip flop them very easily without a guilty conscience.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Hasek the most decorated. It's just that the fact that Perreault was 17 years, he was all Buffalo Sabre, and again, I think because he wasn't selfish with the puck. I mean, the guy had a lot of assists, and if he was a little more selfish, those scoring numbers would have been a lot higher. Again, his puck handling skills, his speed. I mean, he was able to juke people out, and some of the moves I saw this guy made were just incredible. So that's good stuff, Dad. I think so. Are you surprised that I matched up with so many of yours?
No, not really, because I know you was going to go with a lot of the older guys, and most of my guys are the older ones too, and some are done by stats, and most of them are done by stats, and some of them weren't. So no, I wasn't very, very surprised at all.
So you mentioned Michael Pekka, and he was also a very good penalty killer, defensive center as well. So very much like the Don Luces of the world. And so it's great that you gave him a mention, because I totally agree.
For his size, he wasn't the biggest guy, but for his size, he hit people harder than anybody else on the team at that time. He was a big hitter.
Yeah, I mean, so Dad, let me ask you this: is there anybody currently on the team or a prospect up and coming that you could see in 10 to 15 years, maybe hopefully you and I are still around, but in 10 years or 15 years, that could, if we were to do a show again, that could kind of make this top three? Do you see anything promising right now with
Well,
any of the guys we have?
that's really hard because in this day with free agencies and moves and everything, you know, the guys don't stick around that long with their original teams. There's a lot of loyalty issues in there. Um, One prospect that I really like, and he's only 19 years old, and he played with the big guys in Germany last year and won one of the German World Cups. He just played his first NHL game last night. Was JJ Peterka. He's only 19 years old.
Yeah.
This kid is, and he played with the big guys last year. I think JJ, you know, has the potential that if he stick around long enough and he gets the right breaks, he'll be doing a lot of scoring for us. Uh, I was kind of surprised last night that Jack Quinn didn't get the call up because Jack Quinn's was leading the American Hockey League in scoring. But then I found out before the game he's one of the 5 guys down in Rochester that are sick. He's got mono, so he was out too. So, but I don't think that Quinn will be around. He's too small. And
Gotcha.
you know, Darlene, if he ever lives up to his billing, could rate up there in defenseman.
Yeah, he's kind of like a Housley type player, right?
More or less, that's what they kind of labeled him. I hate when they label these young kids at 18 years old when they say generational players. That puts so much pressure on all of them kids when they're at that age to be able to do that. And it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years before a defenseman even starts to really feel comfortable in the game. And he's starting to come up on that. He's starting to score a little bit now. He had a couple of assists last night. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. The only guy I could see, and again, this is just a far stretch, but based on what he's done, is Owen Power, our number 1 pick this year. I mean, the guy looks like he's going to have a very good career as if he stays healthy. He's got all the talent. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd wait and see on him.
Yeah.
I wasn't all hyper about that they picked him first, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I know you had some of the other offensive guys that you were looking at.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, based on all of his accomplishments in college and what he's done in the World Junior, what do you want to call it, the championships, he just looks like he's ready to go. And I think you'll see. Well, let's hope. I think he'll be a big ad for us next year. I do want to mention I did see this big. I just saw this, and I like early on. You said I like number 6, Jim Schoenfeld, best fight ever with Shawnee. Fought Wayne Cashman and put him through the boards, then fought Bobby Orr at center ice. Oh my God, was that the same brawl? It had to be. I don't recall that one, but my goodness, yeah. There was a lot of brawlers on the Sabres, and that was the time of, people would say, hey, I went to a boxing match and a fight broke out because there was just so much fighting.
I like some of the spirit on the young kids we got coming up. Like Dylan Cousins, this is only his first full year. Last year as a rookie, he dropped the gloves and won there. And Rob Ray went, holy crap, he shouldn't be funny. Then last night, one of the guys took Kyle Oposa, one of our older veterans, into the boards pretty hard. Brent Murray, the rookie, dropped the gloves and went with him.
Nice.
The other guy, the guy that he fought with, got 5 minutes for fighting, and Brent Murray got 2, 5, and 10.
Oh, jeez.
But he's a rookie. And so they got a lot of spirit,
Yeah.
And he's the one that I'm hoping turns into a semi-Andrechuk because he loves playing in front of the net and he loves being close and so forth. And when he was in the American Hockey League, he was tearing it up at close. The National Hockey League is a little bit different, but he scored a couple goals from in close right now. So that's a guy to keep an eye on, Brent Murray.
Yeah, there's a lot of promising prospects that we got coming up the line there. So hopefully they pan out and we get things turned around. But I'll ask you a second there, Dad, about the current Sabres situation. But I did want to say, Big L had a question. He's like, hey, do you guys remember Brian Spencer? He was crazy. He was excellent in the checking in the corners. I remember a Spencer, but I don't remember being a Brian Spencer.
No, I don't remember. It might have been one of those years when I was off away overseas in Europe or in Korea.
I'll have to look him up, Big Al, because it does not come to mind right now. But yeah, if you're saying it, I totally believe it. So I'll check him out afterwards. For sure. So, Dad, the last question I had for you is just the kind of current status of the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, we had some shows, we've already talked about it. We knew it was going to kind of play out this way. And your big ask of the Sabres is to never give up and play to that, that final horn goes off. What are you seeing? Is that what you're seeing this year? Do you like what you're seeing?
Well, I knew this was going to be anybody that knows the Sabres knows we weren't going to have a very good team. We weren't going to make the playoffs, but Granado has them playing, and he has them playing hard. Last night, they didn't. They played half of the second period that way, but they didn't. But you know, that's going to be so. You have a bad game, you have a bad game. The whole team had a bad game, but I see them playing hard. I see so many times that they fall behind and then they come back and they tie the game, and then maybe they lose it in overtime or a shootout. But they don't stop. So that's the one thing that I really like, and that's got to be really hard for the get those guys to do that because they're professionals and they want to win. If they keep on losing like this, it's got to be the coaches working with them to try to get them their enthusiasm up to get back out tomorrow. Like tonight, they're going against the Islanders in a little, about a half and a 40 minutes. Get them out after that lousy game they played last night and get them going again. So I'm a Sabre fan. I take it as it is, and
Yep.
as long as they prove to me that they're trying. And now, well, COVID's kind of forcing it, and so are injuries. And some of the kids that I'm waiting for are starting to get to play some now.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was cool that defenseman Prowl got his first game in the NHL at the age of 29 last night, and he scored. You know,
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you about UPL in a second, but Big Al, I did go to a great site called Elite Prospects. I checked out your boy Brian Spencer, and yeah, Brian Spencer played for the Sabres back, and he was originally drafted by the Maple Leafs, but he played for the Sabres. He came over to the Sabres in '74, and he was part of that Cup run. Played with the Sabres for 4 seasons, and he was there for that Stanley Cup run. And let's see, what did he do that year? He had 12 goals, 29 assists for 41 points. He was a plus 17, and he played in 73 games. So, yeah, thanks for bringing him up. I mean, that's going way back, Dad, to the days that you're saying you probably weren't able to see information on
no,
him.
that was a couple more of my Korea years. Remember, I spent almost 6 years in Korea.
Yeah, so he played 16 games in the playoffs. He had 4 assists. He was plus 8. And he played in, let's see, for the 4 years he was with the Sabres, 3 of those years we went to the playoffs. So I'm going to check more out on him. But looks like he was another one of those guys that kind of got overshadowed by that great French connection, all those scorers, the Danny Gears, who, again, Danny Gear played on the line that was supposed to shut people down, yet this team, they were able to put up points. And then Spencer, just another one of those key role players that was probably out there also shutting down top scorers from the other team. So good stuff, man. Big Al bringing it today. So, Dad, UPL. So UPL, he'd been doing fantastic recently. He'd been giving up only 2 goals a game, and then I see he gives up 4 goals last night. And then I looked into it a little more, and so we gave up 42 or 44 shots in the game. And then I'm looking on social media, and I'm looking on Facebook where they have this Buffalo Bills group. I'm sorry, not Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Sabres group. And they're just bagging on him. He's not our answer. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you saying this? That kid, it was bombarded with shots last night. I've seen him make some spectacular plays. What's your thoughts on UPL?
Well, he was our promise. I don't know if he's going to be our longtime answer, but I agreed at the beginning of the season. I watched preseason that he went down. He didn't make, Craig Anderson and Tokarski made 1 and 2. And the rest were sent down. And I agreed with that. And I agree with that. And then when he went down there, and I don't know whether it was a kind of disappointment or not, he really stunk it up for a few games down in the American Hockey League. So then because of injuries, he gets the call up. All right. And he goes 4 or 5 games, only letting up 2 goals a game. He only gets 1 win, I think it was. But when you're only letting up 2 goals and you're not winning, something else is wrong on the team. And that's your offense.
Yeah.
So, my hopes is we got in the one trade, we got this kid that's in college named Levi. We got another kid that's in college, and I think his name's Modosky or Modafa or something like that. And both of these guys are doing real well in college. Now, we don't know how that's going to equate when they get into the pros because, 90% of those college players don't have enough skill to make it to the pros. We don't know how to quit. So, but I'm hoping that, just because he let up 4 goals last night, I'm hoping they start him tonight. Give this kid a run more, and then let him be, if he can prove himself, let him be the guy that's going to hold us off for a year or two while these other kids are coming out of college.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
shows the talent. The only thing that I see of him when I watch, because I watch every game, is sometimes he comes way too far out of the net, and so
Yeah.
the sides get open a lot. But I forget how he's pretty young. Still
Yeah.
it's his fourth year, but I think he's like 21 years old or something.
I'm not sure of his age, but yeah, he's very young.
So that's my thoughts on him. Promise is there.
Yeah.
Will it come true? I don't know.
Now, Levi, the prospect you have, the other goaltender, I think that was part of the Reinhardt deal, wasn't that?
Yeah, right. A part of the Reinhardt trade, and he's tearing it up in Providence. I think it's in college. He's in Providence. The other kid may be the kid that's goalie for wherever Owen Power is. I keep forgetting who that is.
Michigan.
Michigan. Okay, it may be him, or Montana. One of the two. I heard Martin Baron talking about him a couple weeks ago and said he was tearing it up too. So we got some kids in the pipeline. We hopefully that'll be the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just checking real quick on UPL's age real quick for you. But yeah, so when I see that on social media, I'm like, oh my God, give the guy a break here. And that's why I asked you last night.
Even with 4 goals last night, his save percentage was over 900.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a better save percentage than the winning goaltender did because the winning goaltender only had to face 22 shots. Yeah. So UPL is only 22 years old, Dad.
Yeah, no.
22 years old. I mean, he's 6'3", 196 pounds, so he's like that bigger guy that I was talking about. I don't know how these 5'8" guys played goaltender back in the day, but they did. And they played with a lot less equipment. The equipment was nowhere near like it is today to protect these guys. But yeah, so I don't know. I've liked what I've seen. Hopefully, like you said, with him, maybe with Levi, one of those younger guys, we get 2 young guys that we can count on for many, many years, and we'll see.
Yeah, and I think we drafted somebody in like the 7th round last year, but I can't remember who he was.
So, Dad, I mean, I think that kind of wraps it up for us. I want to give you a moment here to talk about your channel a little bit, SoCal Sabre. That's your gamer tag. I always say SoCal Sabre, but that is your gamer tag. If you want to play Dad on Xbox, hit him up. But talk about your channel a little bit.
Okay. I started my channel about when COVID hit. And I said, I got to be doing something in that. And I am a board game collector. And I says, well, let me do something with this collection. I've done a few of my other things like trips to places and so. So, and the majority of half of my games are war games. And I do a lot of studying on the war games. I'll read a book about it. Like if it's Guadalcanal, I'll read a book about it so that I have more knowledge about the history and the game and everything. So I share unboxings and I share game demos, and not only with board games and other family type games too. Okay, maybe you're sitting at home and you want to, wow, man, I don't know what game I want to buy in that. Well, if you're thinking about one of mine that I made a video on, you can go look and say, okay, that looks pretty cool, or I like those components, or I don't like the components. Make you a little bit better shopper, or, a little bit more knowledgeable. Yeah. I also play a video game called Tower 3D Pro. It's really neat. It's an air traffic control simulation. For those that don't know, I was an air traffic controller for 20 years. And till this day, I still miss that job in the camaraderie. So this kind of fills a little bit of hole in mine. But some of my people, my subscribers, have recently, this month, I've gotten like 2 or 3 different requests. And one of them has requested me to do some computer PC basketball games, which I do own.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do them for them. And I was thinking, well, it's not going to be a bad idea. Maybe every once in a while, I'm going to throw up a PC game in there, like Action PC Golf, and show people how good that game is, or Action PC Football or something, one of the games. So I think I'm going to throw a little bit more videos in there too, see if that brings a little bit more life into the the channel, which is getting a little stagnant right now in growth. But It's like I told him this week, if I'm at the end of the growth, so be it.
You're not at the end of the growth, and we're going to get you to 400. So, Big Al, I know you're there. And I believe Jake's already subscribed, but if you haven't, check the link in the description. Go to my dad's channel, hit that subscribe button. Let's get him over 400. He's got more subscribers than this channel, and I'm so proud of him for what he's done.
Yeah, I just did a December monthly update the other day.
Yeah.
My next one that I'm working on right now is going to be, I'm going to review I'm going to review the war games that hit my table in 2021, and then I'm going to review them on which ones I like the best.
Yeah, the war games have always been popular from your viewers. And Dad, you say you're a collector. You're a borderline hoarder, I must say. You can see those games behind you on your shelf, and that's not even all of them. I can see those games right behind you to the right. I know you've done some giveaways, and I do appreciate how you have folks coming into your channel saying, hey, can you do a... Oh, we got some update over there. I always have people coming in your channel saying, hey, can you do a review on this game? And maybe you don't have it, but you'll go get it. I mean, so it's awesome. And
yeah, like that one guy asked me this time to get inside the paint basketball, give him a demo of it. Well, I don't own it, but I ordered it.
Yeah.
Because I'm always adding to my collection. And my collection is small compared to some of the people I know.
Yeah. And
Nick and I go over to our friend Dan's house, and he has over 900 games.
Dang.
His garage is redone into a big man cave with wide screens and everything in it.
That's crazy. Yeah, I love how you bring in families back to the game, to the table with board games. It seems to be everyone's on their video or on their mobile devices and playing video games. But these board games are cool. Every year we do a charity event, and those board games are important during that charity event. A lot of folks, because you got this amazing gaming table that you have set up in your living room, which is awesome. And you're always have a game on that table. So it's always cool to see.
Yeah. In the game, we have a monthly game night. Like we had one in December. We had 4 people show up, and that was cool. We played 3 different games over about 4 hours.
Yeah.
Next week, January 8th, it was the second Saturday every month we have. It's not open to everybody in the world because this is COVID, but, close friends and family.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Dad. Well, thanks again for joining me. It's always fun to catch up with you, especially when it comes to the Buffalo Sabres and the Buffalo Bills. I know you're huge supporters of Buffalo sports, back in the Buffalo Braves days as well. So it's always great to get on and do a show with you, Dad. I appreciate all the information you bring always. I know you watch every game. I can't keep up with watching all the Sabre games with all that's going on, but I always am able to reach out to you and get some real talk with you as far as how this team's doing. So thank you again, Dad. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. We'll do this again. So let's go Buffalo. Let's go Sabres. Let's go Bills. Thanks everyone in the channel for joining us today. And again, if you see this after it's been broadcasted live, please put some comments in there. I'm always scouring the comments, making sure I'm getting answers out to people. If there's a question that I can't answer, I'll reach out to my dad. And I would love to hear your top 3 at each position. I think we hit the big ones. We agreed on, I would say, 90% of the players that we mentioned, but I would love to hear yours as well. So thanks everyone. We'll talk soon. Have a great day now. Bye everyone.